I like coffee, I like tea, I like the Java jive and it loves me. Coffee and tea and the Java and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup. Ah. And that's the end. Welcome and thank you very much. Tip jars on the piano. Hello and welcome everyone. Gosh, I think that's the height of the whole thing. I'm afraid you've already seen the pinnacle of this demonstration. Hello and welcome to everyone, old and new. My name is Nathan Lyon, Chef Nathan Lyon. I am from Arlington, Virginia, a Beltway baby. I earned a health sciences degree from James Madison University, went to UCLA Extension, where I completed a course to become a medical technician. I thought, nope. Then I went to Le Cordon Bleu, North America to become a chef. I worked with farmers for over 20 years, and I've been on television for 15, got an Emmy nomination and a seasonal cookbook, but literally, that's nothing. I know it sounds like a lot, but it's actually nothing because the person who I was told recently, that being today, that it was our anniversary, Mary Eve Brown, welcome, clinical oncology dietitian specialist at Johns Hopkins Kimmel Cancer Center. Happy anniversary, number 3. Hopefully we can make it to number 4. How the heck are you?
I'm awesome, Chef. So good to see you. Happy New Year.
Oh yeah, Happy New Year. Gosh, yeah, what a crazy New Year it's been. And is it weird for your partner to know that you've got a chef on the side? It's just a weird anniversary, like a thing. I don't know. Personal chef. Well, just we'll shelf that. We'll just put that to the side and discuss it later. It's a little awkward. For all of you that have been joining us for these last 3 years, you know the drill. But if you're new from here in the States or all around the world, this is how it works. If you have any questions, cooking questions for myself or questions for Mary Eve Brown, this is how it works. You're going to type those questions in the chat box, and then this voice over here,
Everybody.
this voice, Sarah, who is the brains behind all of at least this side, will convey those questions, and we can have this really lovely conversation and keep those questions coming because it really helps keep the energy up. And questions do spawn other questions. So I guess that's about it. Yeah. Woo! Crick, crack, crackety, crack, crack, crack. I have been prepping this morning to make sure things are pretty easeful. We're gonna bang out our normal four recipes in less than an hour. This is all in real time, so let's make it happen. First and foremost, it's actually still breakfast time here in Los Angeles, California. So the first thing I'm going to start with is a frittata. It is an herby frittata with a little lemon zest and some fresh fennel. So the best way to get this started is I'm going to have this large nonstick pan. I only use a nonstick pan for eggs, only eggs, and then metal gets nowhere near it, okay? And we're going to start with 4 generous tablespoons of salted butter. This is the kind of, I mean, if I went to a bar and somebody poured me a drink, this is a heavy-handed 4 tablespoons, so that's a good thing. So I'm going to go ahead and put this over medium heat and get that started, okay? Don't even have to worry about it from this point forward. I also have my oven preheated at 325 degrees. The rack is at the middle rack, okay? So we're going to start it on the stovetop and finish it off with much more gentle cooking in the oven, all right?
DDF chiming in saying, I love frittatas, excited to see this recipe.
Oh my gosh, it's really good. Frittata is one of those things, it's like people forget they exist. They usually go for the over easy, hard boiled, whatever, but this is one of those things that's just really lovely. It is a bit on the elegant side, which is nice, but I don't think it takes a lot longer than, say, making a scrambled eggs does, okay? It just really elevates it. You get a little bit more flavor in there as well. Future reference, whenever I do this, I'm not throwing it on the ground. I do have a bowl for my compost that I like to keep to the side. And if you're cooking a lot of fun stuff, it's nice to have a little bowl on the side so you don't have to continuously bring it outside of the compost or put it in the trash. This is a fennel bulb. You may have seen it at your farmer's market or at the grocery store. Usually it has big, beautiful fronds. It almost looks like celery that kind of comes off the top, these really frilly fronds. It looks like dill at the very ends. It's lovely. If you've never had fennel, I implore you, definitely give it a shot. Let me know what you think. And the way to cut it, these top portions are not very edible. They take a long time to braise down. So we're going to go ahead and put those in the compost. I'm going to cut these off.
We have Nancy watching from Washington. Welcome, Nancy.
Washington, D.C. or Washington State?
Washington State.
Love it. West Coast, West Coast, Best Coast. Not true, but you know, we all can get along. So the fennel, what I've done is I've just cut it in half. I'm going to cut it lengthwise from top to bottom, okay? Just to make it a little bit easier on myself. Because this doesn't take long, I'm going to cut this fennel in smaller pieces. If I wanted really big chunky pieces like for a salad, you can go ahead and make the slices, say, 1/4 inch or 1/3 of an inch wide. But we're going to cut this the same size I would cut, say, an onion, okay? Nice and small, maybe a 1/4 inch dice. Really pay attention to when it comes to your slices, because what will happen is you may have a really big chunk or a really tiny piece. The little tiny piece may not be cooked through, and the really big, chunk may be almost raw. It's better to have it all the same size. But because it's fennel, something you can actually eat raw, give yourself a break. Let's just relax a little bit. Don't go crazy. Just go ahead and see if you can make them all roughly the same size. Actually,
Hey, and Chef,
I can hear that butter popping along, Mary Eve. Yeah. That's good, because Mary Eve, I had a question for you about butter, but you go ahead and go first.
we've talked about this before. Fennel is a digestive aid. So in people who have digestive problems, it's totally a great match. The other thing is it has anti-cancer and anti-inflammatory properties to it. And I find I can eat it raw. Some people don't like it because of like the anise kind of flavor to it. But when you cook it like Chef is doing, or you roast it, it really mellows that part out.
100%. And it's also one of these things where you have it in a stew. I mean, right now we are in fennel season. If you know anything about me, I pretty much just eat seasonally. I think the nutritional benefits are the highest. The price is the lowest because everyone's growing it, and the flavor is the best. So it's just a win-win situation for all three of those things: the health and also the pocketbook.
And Chef, we've talked about this before. Things that are grown in same season go together. So fennel and orange together, or fennel and grapefruit together. Oh my gosh, my
Great.
love.
Amazing salad. But the question I had for you was about butter, or about fat in general. I'm using butter today. If people can't absorb dairy, if they're non-dairy right now, or just the health benefits of butter as opposed to other types of oil, what do you think about that, Mary Eve?
Yeah, so we want to have a low saturated fat diet, and butter does come with saturated fat, whereas avocado oil or grapeseed oil or olive oil, they come with omega-3 properties. So I usually say, how are you going to use that butter? Is it going to be a topper on something? Then great. But if you're not going to really need that part of it, maybe look at oils to add. And then we've also talked about, the smoke point and all that kind of stuff. So same thing with, olive oil. You don't want to cook it at a high heat. It denatures at a high heat. So normally I say, if you're going to use butter, use it as kind of a yummy topper to something. But if you only use it occasionally, then cooking with it is fine. It's, it's the balance. If it's something I do every day, that's going to be more powerful than something I do, occasionally.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you.
Can you make this frittata recipe without the butter and swap with olive oil, or?
You can make it with olive oil if you want to, for sure, not a problem. The most important thing is that you have some sort of oil in there, or fat that's in there, because things like lemon zest that I just zested, any sort of oil will actually hold the oil and transfer those flavors together. Otherwise, everything would sort of steam. The interesting thing about non-stick pans, and I don't want to, I don't want to beat this down too much, but there are certain non-stick properties that are great if you want to keep your pans, non-stick pans, going longer or doing what they're supposed to do, which is being non-stick. Do not use a non-stick spray. That is something that people are always surprised when I tell them to not use a non-stick spray with a non-stick pan. And the reason why you don't want to do that is because non-stick sprays have emulsifiers in them. And emulsifiers make it so that two things like water and fat stick together. You're actually making a non-stick pan stickier if you use a non-stick spray. It seems counterproductive, but there's no need to use non-stick spray. Just use olive oil or butter and you're good to go. Okay?
I had a really interesting question the other day from a patient. about nonstick pans and cancer risk. So, there are chemicals that make it nonstick. So I had to do a little bit of research to see, oh, I never really thought about that before because Chef, you and I, we cook in stainless steel mostly.
That's right.
But you're right. I do use a nonstick pan occasionally for some things. So research has shown it's not a risk as long as you don't go above a 500 temperature. So if Chef was going to put that in the oven at 320, we are fine. And on top of the stove, we are fine. So don't put nonstick pans above 500 degrees. You're probably just fine. The other thing is if you're cooking with your grandmother's nonstick, you kind of want to throw that out. Or if it gets, because that's a little bit suspect. And you don't want to have scratches or nicks in the pan. So how you clean it is really important. So as long as you're below 500 degrees, it's not super duper old, and it doesn't have like nicks in it, you're totally safe to use it.
That's right. One of the things that you had mentioned, Mary Eve, is using a stove top. If you're going on high, if you're one of those people where you're just like, I just put it on high, then maybe nonstick is not for you. When you have your stove top on high, it's the equivalent of like 550, 650 degrees. That's just simply too hot for a nonstick pan. This is more for like, if you want to cook something the same as like putting your feet or in a nice soaking tub, like something more gentle. Eggs you don't want to blast. This isn't a deep fat fryer or a fryer. This is something a bit more elegant, something a bit more soft and slow. So a medium heat is usually all you want to do with a nonstick pan anyway.
Going back to the butter and the fats, Mary Eve, question, some people sub butter with ghee. Sorry, sub ghee for butter. Is that healthier or healthy?
It just removes the milk solids. It doesn't change the fat content. So ghee is not going to be any different than butter from a standpoint of fat benefit. But if you do have a dairy intolerance, you could do the ghee because the milk solids are removed. That's a great question.
It's a great question.
You say what you're doing, and then I got a question.
Well, I was going to say, I've cracked 7 eggs in here. If you were watching closely, I really dove in there because the first egg just shattered. I found 3 little pieces of egg shell on the side. Thank God it was the first egg, which really is one of the things. If you're working with eggs a lot, I like to have a secondary bowl that I crack the egg into. So just in case there is a shell in there, I can fish it out pretty easily. Imagine if this were filled with like, ricotta cheese and, some other ingredients where you're just really trying to get in there to find that shell. It's nice to have a secondary bowl, so you just go ahead and fish that shell out. Makes it a lot easier. Question.
So you're going to whisk that?
I am going to whisk this, but when I'm whisking, just watch this. I'm not whisking like this. I'm not having these eggs chase themselves. What I want to do is I want to go side to side only, and that makes them collide with each other and they break up and whisk a lot faster. Same with heavy whipping cream. And anything you want to whisk, go side to side and not in a circle.
Okay, so we have a question from Mary Eve. Question from a patient. I had my gastrectomy over a year ago. I've been doing well and eating is getting more normal. My main problem is anemia. I do not tolerate iron supplements at all. Is there foods that I should concentrate on?
Yeah, so this can be kind of a chronic problem for some patients. First off, I always say, get some lab work done. Get an iron study done, get a B12 level, because you want to make sure what is the anemia coming from. And if you don't have a stomach anymore, you really should be monitoring your B12s, and most people are going to need to be on a shot. But if you haven't had a total, you may still have some. We talked about that intrinsic factor, that crazy marriage with intrinsic factor and B12. So yeah, iron supplements can be like really nauseating and like not digestive friendly. There's a couple of things to keep in mind. So people who are trying to eat more iron in their diet, you don't want to be drinking, sorry, chef, coffee or tea when you're eating, because the tannins that are in coffee and tea will block the absorption of the iron. But if you add a vitamin C to a high iron food, that actually helps absorption. So tea and coffee separate from high iron foods, but actually adding a fruit, a vegetable that has a high vitamin C in it, yay. There's a couple, we always hear about like liver, like don't eat liver, but liver is the highest iron thing we can eat, but don't eat liver. And then meats. But a fortified cereal, like grape nuts or Total, they actually have the RDA amount of iron added to them. And if I did, I don't have to do it with milk. Maybe I just do them dry or add them to yogurt or sprinkle them on something. Another idea is beans. Beans are actually a good iron food. Chickpeas, baked beans, clams actually have and oysters have a high iron content. Hot cereals, cream of wheat, grits, and then pumpkin seeds. So those are all high iron foods, which most people can probably do one or two of those. But then I'm not eating my yogurt and drinking a cup of tea. And then I'm also going to try maybe add some strawberries that are high vitamin C. But getting the blood work done to figure out where the anemia is coming from is really super duper important, because if it's a B12 anemia instead of an iron anemia, increasing the iron is not going to help. It's the B12 part of that you need to do.
Mary, why did you say not to eat liver?
Oh my golly. Okay. So if you think about, and this really, I mean, if you have a cow and you eat that, or you have a chicken and you eat that, that's different than if you think about what the liver does in an animal. It's our detoxer. So now I am going to eat the organ of an animal and all the toxins they are exposed to. I don't know if I want to do that or not, but if you like liver and you want to do it occasionally, that's not a risk. I just wouldn't try to do that on a basis of a weekly or that kind of thing, just because I don't want to expose myself to the things that's been exposed to.
Okay.
So you take me back to a movie with liver and fava beans. I mean, so I shouldn't be eating people is what you're telling me. Great. Unless they're healthy.
I just bought fava beans the other day. I love them.
Unless people are very healthy, don't eat their liver. Okay, so this is where we are right now. If you look, this is not full caramelization. This is a little bit of brown butter. The solids in the butter that we had talked about earlier are starting to brown around this fennel. It smells amazing. Can you see that okay? Very good. I have the eggs that are in here that I've whisked. I've added a lot of herbs, some fresh herbs. A lot of people, when they get fresh herbs from the grocery store for one recipe, then they're left with all these fresh herbs. And they're like, Nathan, what do you do with all these fresh herbs? This is what you do with said fresh herbs. This is like a cup of fresh herbs. You can go heavier if you want to, okay? So I'm going to pour this egg, these whisk eggs, with the herbs, and it has the lemon zest, a little bit of salt.
What herbs, Chef, what herbs are in there?
You know, the herbs that are in here right now are, and a lot of people may just be like, I'm out. Boy, cilantro. Does anybody have a nervous tick in their eye when I say cilantro? If not, I meant parsley, okay? So parsley, some dill. I also have some mint, some fresh mint, and some basil if you can find it right now. It is sort of middle of winter, but really whatever you have, whatever herbs that you like, soft herbs I'm referring to, not like, you know, big sprigs of rosemary and big sprigs of thyme, things that are really elegant, because this doesn't take long to cook. It only takes 10 minutes to cook inside the oven.
Tarragon.
What was that? Oh, tarragon. Tarragon is one of my favorite herbs, and really it piggybacks beautifully on top of
eggs.
That fennel and eggs that you were talking about, which is perfect. So all I'm doing right now is I'm putting it back over the heat. I put the eggs that are kind of cool to room temperature over top. The temperature of the pan dropped pretty substantially. So all I'm doing is putting it over the heat for like 30 seconds, raise that heat back up. So when it goes in the oven, it'll cook uniformly, something really lovely. And when that middle jiggle is gone inside the egg, it is cooked through. We're going to pull it out and serve that bad boy. Okay. So this is off. This goes into the oven. Watch out for your glasses if you're like me. Right, there we go. And so that is done. So we're done pretty much with that first dish. So at 325, we're looking around 11 to 13 minutes, depending upon, you know, how new or old your oven is. But around that time, you're just looking for, I'll start looking around the 10-minute mark, 11-minute mark, and I give the pan a little jiggle. And when the middle is just barely a little bit of a jiggle, well, for most people, a little less than a jiggle, solid through, we'll pull it out and serve it. Super easy. And it's really delicious, that evening as a dinner course. When you go to Europe, frittata is a dinner course. And here in the States, it can be a brunch course, but it's really lovely for dinner as well. Okay.
Question about cooking in a wrought iron? Like a cast iron? What about cooking in a cast iron?
You know, the interesting thing about cast iron, talk about iron, cooking in cast iron gives you iron.
Yeah.
The thing about cast iron is it's not very good for more delicate applications such as eggs. One, when you heat cast iron up on the top of a stovetop, it doesn't heat uniformly. The best way to heat cast iron to where it's uniformly hot, no hot spots, is actually in the oven.
The oven.
So when I'm, trying to cook something where I need to make sure that there's no hot spots, which there will be if you heat up cast iron on the stovetop, put it in the oven at say 350, pull it out, and then you can put it on the stovetop. And then I make sure that there's no hot spots and things won't be undercooked or overcooked. But for things like eggs, if your cast iron's really nonstick and it's been seasoned very well, you can go ahead and make a lovely egg kind of over easy, not a problem. I know that actually, we know a couple people that really only cook with cast iron because they're seasoned so darn well. And if you're one of those people, God bless you, because you're really lucky and your grandmother probably gave it to you because it's a really lovely thing.
Nancy?
Yeah, I have cast iron that's over 100 years old. I actually keep it in my oven.
There we go.
And so, it's well seasoned.
Yeah.
That's how I roast all my vegetables, is in cast iron.
Perfect.
Yeah, fantastic.
And Nancy asked, does it help in any way to absorb iron?
It does. You get iron from cast iron. My only hesitation is, it's like, for example, when you have grapes have no iron, but raisins have iron. So the way they make raisins is they put grapes on giant iron slabs and they dry them. So they absorb the iron from these big iron slabs. My hesitation about cooking everything in cast iron is anything that's really acidic, like tomatoes, you do not want to cook in cast iron because it will absorb just too much. And you'll also ruin the pan. So you want to have a little bit of stainless steel on the side for things that are really high in acid that you will cook for longer periods of time. Anything else to add to that as far as iron absorption from cast iron, Mary Eve?
Oh, perfect, chef.
Okay, we're done. Well, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Okay, speaking of next time, we already have the frittata. Herby, lemon, frittata, feta, right on top, which I'm not even sure I showed you that. The feta just went on top of that, and it goes in. This is going to be a lovely soup. This is a curried coconut butternut squash soup. Mary Eve, I can just feel the hair on the back of your neck just go because it's come on, we've got these lovely squashes. It is wintertime. These things are in season. So I'm gonna go ahead and peel these first. Okay. I know how I feel about that. I'm gonna go ahead and peel these two Yukon Gold potatoes. This isn't for flavor. This is more just because I do need the starch to thicken the soup. If I just had this, it's going to be a little bit too thin for my taste. If it doesn't bother you, then just get a larger squash for this particular recipe. You will get the recipe. But for me, I kind of like it where the finished product coats the back of a spoon. It's a little bit velvety. That's kind of my sweet spot. So we have about 1.75 pounds butternut squash, and we have, what is this, like 1/2 pound of Yukon Gold potatoes. So I'm going to go ahead and peel these first. If you find that when you're peeling your vegetables, it's difficult, and I'm saying this because I go to people's homes a lot and look at the type of equipment they're cooking on, and they'll still have that metal peeler that they got from their mom as a hand-me-down when they left to college 20 years ago. That knife is gone. That ship has sailed. Get yourself a new peeler, because there are two blades here. One is for left-handed people and one is for right-handed people. So if I were left-handed, I would use that side, but I'm right-handed, so I'm going to go ahead and use this side. So for carrots, you can actually use both blades and go twice as fast in the kitchen, right? Mary Eve, do you have a favorite squash that you like to use? Is butternut your favorite, or honey nut, or kabocha? What do you like to go best? Or is color more important for health?
So I love butternut, but I also love pumpkin. I don't think people use pumpkin the way we should be using it. So butternut and pumpkin go really, really well together in this soup. But yeah, I love butternut. I also like spaghetti squash. So a spaghetti squash, when you roast it, you seed it and then you roast it. And it almost makes like spaghetti strings. So it's a really nice way to make spaghetti with using a squash. I love acorn. Stuffing in acorns. I think squashes are the best, and they're inexpensive, right? So the thing I love about your butternut squash is the long neck on it. So you really want to buy one, and chef, correct me if I'm wrong, that has a long neck, because you're going to get more squash out of it and a smaller head. I call it the head. I don't know if it's a head, but the bulb part of it.
Yeah, I call it the butt. Who knew? Huh? Huh? Yeah, you're exactly right. So the seeds are only found in here. If you go to your farmer's market, I really haven't seen them yet in grocery stores, but they're really not an unusual type. They're not an unusual species. It's just that sometimes they can get really big. If you ever see me walking through an airport in the middle of winter, sometimes you will see me have something around my neck like an anaconda. It is not an anaconda, it is a Tahitian squash, which looks almost exactly like a butternut squash. The flesh is darker, it's almost like a burnt orange instead of this sort of lighter yellow orange. So the flavor is a little bit more pronounced. It's a little bit sweeter. I just love it. So the squash itself is like that long or longer, and it has this crazy curl. And then all the seeds are just in that side, so you can cleave it off into 1 pound pieces. It's really lovely, and it kind of lasts forever inside your refrigerator.
So while you cut that, I have a question for Mary Eve.
Question from Mary Eve. Let's do it.
From another patient. I have lost so much strength and I look like a skeleton. I'm 6 weeks out of treatment and thought I would be doing better now. How do I get more energy and rebuild strength?
So people need to give themselves time to recover. And, gastric cancer can be like up to a year of treatment. Well, if that's your case, in 6 weeks, man, you're just beginning to start the recovery process. So giving it time, I usually say as long as you were in your treatment, that's about the amount of time out that you need for recovery. And if you didn't get the right nutrition in, which can happen, right, with treatment and surgery and all the things, you probably used up your muscle mass. And when you use up your muscle mass, everyday activities are exhausting. Patients will say, I get up out of bed, I take a shower, I got to lay back down again. I go up a flight of steps, I got to sit down at the top. It's because you've used up your muscle mass. So number one, give yourself grace, give yourself time. Number two, make sure that you're getting the amount of protein that you need to replenish that stores that you lost. So it can be double fold what people need who are just, kind of living their lives. We go by kilos of body weight. So you take your weight divided by 2.2, that gives you your kilos. It's 1.2 to 1.5 grams of protein per kilo of body weight. Whereas normal people, it's 0.6 to 0.8. So you can see it's double the amount. So make sure that you're getting the protein in. And if you're not eating well, eat your protein first. So if I sit down and I've got some eggs and I've got toast and I've got, citrus, eat the eggs first and then eat the other things because you really need that protein. So number one, give yourself grace of time to recover. Two, make sure you're getting the protein in that you need. And then the third thing is move your body. So sometimes people who are fatigued, they don't move. I'm so tired, I can't even get up out of my chair. But actually, if you start moving and you start using your muscles, that's going to help you to gain strength back again. So grace of time, protein, and then move yourself. And it doesn't need to be, I had a patient today, I'm normally a runner. Like I would run 5 miles a day. She's like, I like doing 10 minutes on the treadmill now. I'm like, that's okay. At least you're doing 10 minutes on the treadmill, right? So you're moving your body. That's going to help you to regain that strength and energy.
Amazing. As you were talking, answering that question, Mary, it reminds me of the reason why I'm here. The reason why Sarah and I am here is because one of my really best buds, Hans Rufert. Hans Rufert is, I'm sure a lot of you watching have met him numerous times. He's just an amazing man. He's an incredible chef. And I don't even know what it's been. It's been maybe 20 years for him since his initial surgery. So he's a testament to strength and healing. And he's like an anomaly to me. And I've done a lot of galas with him and a lot of fundraisers with him. And he's just such a brilliant guy. So sort of a shout out to Hans as being an inspiration to really everybody that meets him. He's just such a wonderful, wonderful dude. So, but again, I wouldn't be here. Sarah and I wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be celebrating our 3rd-year anniversary, Mary Eve, if it weren't for Hans. So big shout out to him. Love comes in many different forms, and I love that guy. He's such a great, great chef and a great man.
But it's time to check your frittata.
Oh, time to check the frittata. That's a good segue. Time to check the frittata. So just in case you're wondering, this is not over the heat. This is really just a dump and cook. So that makes it really, very simple. I'm going to make things a little bit easier on myself, have a separate cutting board, because I'm going to be serving it and cutting it on this, okay? Then please make sure that you have something to put over the handle of your frittata pan. I cannot tell you how many times in professional restaurants where people just grab a hot pan. It's not worth it. Grab yourself one of these. This is like an extension of my hand, all right? So steam, yeah, it's definitely there. And okay,
Look ready?
yeah, no wet wobble, okay? There's no wet wobble in the middle, which is usually how long it takes for those of you that bake. You know, you see it like the bread or the cake or whatever, the sides rise up before the middle does. So if the middle doesn't wobble, these eggs are cooked through, okay? Non-stick. I mean, I could do this all day. We don't have all day, so I'm gonna go ahead and serve it. What do you think?
You want to get it out of the pan right away so it doesn't overcook?
You do, yeah. Sarah makes a very good point. It's very easy just to put this to the side, but because the pan has a lot of residual heat still in the pan, I don't want the eggs to overcook. There's something really elegant about properly cooked eggs. I don't want them to be just rubbery as heck. So I have this off to the side. This is, again, it's a lovely brunch. It's a delicious breakfast. It's a wonderful dinner when you still have some left over. It's really, really wonderful. So let me go ahead and serve this up, shall I? Just to get this thing going. Just to show you how quickly we move in these cooking demos. I'm gonna go ahead and just slice myself a nice slice. It doesn't have to be a lot. Do not serve yourself a gigantic slice. It's okay to go back. If you're still hungry, go back, have a little bit more, okay? That is a lovely little thin frittata. It looks tiny, but like our little mini long-haired dachshund, it's feisty. It's got a lot of flavor in there. Teeny little tube body, but he's ready to go, okay? So just that little slice has a lot to offer, so much flavor, the cheese, the herbs, the fennel that Mary Eve was talking about, the dill, I mean, it all has so much going on, and that is a wonderful meal for anybody, okay? Like Sarah. This is a wonderful meal for Sarah, and I can put that next to Sarah, and that's where that goes, all right? So I'm gonna put this off to the side. For those of you that want that, just go ahead and send us your mailing address, and I'll pop this in USPS. We'll have it to you tomorrow, okay? So that goes there. Let's get back to this soup, shall we? So far, all I have inside the soup is the potato, and I went ahead and peeled and diced the butternut squash, okay? So that's all that goes in there so far. I do need some liquid. I always try to add more flavor to something, so instead of just adding water, I'm gonna add stock. I keep beating this drum to the point where I have told people at grocery stores that have grabbed a boxed stock, and I've kind of swooped in there, cartoon style, and I'll say, do you like the flavor of that boxed stock? And they look around for a camera. There is no camera. And I always say, this better than bouillon. Again, I don't get paid nothing. I just think the flavor is really good. It can be organic. It can be vegetable stock, whatever you like. It's going to be a lot easier. And I'll show you how easy it is. Because if I open up a box stock, it usually is 4 cups. This is 2 cups of just water. And then I can add a couple teaspoons of just this better than bouillon. I don't have to mix it in there and then have to wash out that measuring cup. It's just really easy. That's all there is to it. And this goes back in the fridge. Okay.
Our DDF programs manager says that someone without a stomach, frittatas are my favorite breakfast.
Amazing. So we're on the right track. This is great.
Hey, Chef,
Yes.
I have a question. Can you freeze that? Can you like
A
the
frittata?
Yeah.
I'm gonna say that's the answer. I'm gonna say no.
Okay.
Only because there is still some water in there, even though it's bound up with the protein and the fat. But what happens is when you freeze it, a lot like when you freeze certain things and they just turn to mush, like a banana, that has a lot of starch to hold it together. But a frittata is one of those things that all the moisture will turn to ice, and then when you thaw it out, I just don't think the integrity is very good.
Okay.
Yeah, good question. But the thing is, you can always use a much smaller nonstick pan. They get really, really tiny, believe me. Sometimes they're like 4 inches, and just cut the recipe in a quarter or in half or whatever you need to do. So just make only what you need to do. But great question, Mary.
Oh, okay, I hear you now.
Yeah, sometimes the nonstick pans are teeny.
Right. So I have patients who they'll blend cottage cheese, they'll put eggs in it, and then put that in a loaf pan and bake it off, and then they individually freeze them. And I'm wondering if it's the addition of the cottage cheese that makes they heat up fine. I'm thinking that might be the difference.
You know what? Maybe I'll pop some of this in the freezer and get back to you.
Yeah, because I like
Maybe.
for patients who are going through treatment or don't have a great appetite, freezing individual little things in the freezer.
Sure.
That way they can just pop it in the microwave and it's a quick, it's a quick do.
Sure.
So yeah, awesome. Okay, thanks.
You're very welcome. You had mentioned with the question I had for you for the fats, the butter and fats and oils, you had mentioned, correct me if I'm wrong, coconut. You said avocado, maybe coconut oil. This is fat coconut milk. And as a chef, I like to work with things. I don't like any surprises. I want to make sure the recipes turn out perfect every single time. I know that some full fat or even part fat coconut milks that I find have guar gum, which I know is a natural derivative. How do you feel about guar gum as opposed to having coconut milk that has it or doesn't have it, or are you sort of impartial?
I'm impartial to it, but I always say the less ingredients, the better. But I love that you're using coconut milk because it's very caloric. So if I have somebody who's having a hard time getting their calories in, I'm like, can you add coconut milk to something? Can you put it in a smoothie? Can you put it in a shake? Can you add it to a soup? That's all ways to get, easy to digest calories in a delicious way.
For sure. I mean, this soup is one of the soups. It's just so darn easy. Sarah has a sister. This is her house, and she lets us use this kitchen when we're here in LA, and I just love it. I'm super thankful that we're here. When I was working on my cookbook, Great Food Starts Fresh, it's broken down by season. She walked up and she was like, "This is the kind of book I like." And it's a cookbook, and it just had huge word across the front. It just says easy. She was like, "I like this." And I was like, "Yeah, I get it. We all like easy." This falls into that category. This soup, you don't even have to saute anything. You don't heat anything up. Everything goes in the pot. Make sure you put a lid on it. When you leave a lid off of something, if you're making pasta or whatever you have, and you leave the lid off, it's like 70% faster. It'll boil 70% faster if you put a lid on, okay? Keep an eye on it. Even though it's full fat, it'll kind of split on you just a little bit, which is why if you're simmering something that has whole milk or half and half, sometimes it'll split. But if you have heavy cream, it will not split. The more fat something has, the more safe it is that it won't curdle or anything. An extra bonus that we have a little bit of the cubed Yukon Gold potatoes. That starch will keep it from splitting also. So I'll start out on high and I'll bring it down. Once I see a couple blip, 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 I'll lower it down to low and we'll just let that cook until it's done. Until it is done. And then we either go blender or, Mary Eve, maybe it's because I was 6 years in Texas. Favorite? Sponsor? You never know. So yes, this is very simple. If you want to go ahead and blend it using an immersion wand, if you don't have one already, again, I don't like to wash excess things. You can use the immersion wand, make it nice and smooth or chunky, however you want it to be. It'll be cooked through, and then all you have to do is wash that and not the entire blender. So the choice is yours, okay?
The question, I see a lot of soups with coconut milk, but what about soy milk or oat milk?
Okay. That's a good question. Mary Eve, what do you think about the nutrition values for people right out of surgery for those different
So if you,
milks?
a lot of, I call them nut alternative kind of milks or alternative milks. You really need to find the one that has the most nutrition in it. Some of them have like 0 protein or 1 gram of protein, and other of them can have 7 or 8 grams of protein. Now, coconut milk not going to have protein in it, but if you're using it to kind of add extra nutrition in, I would find the one that has the most protein in it, but you don't want to buy it flavored because that's just a bunch of sugar that they add to it.
Good.
So unflavored, and then look for the protein. And chef, we've talked about too, like using a bone broth, can sometimes work in a soup. If that's going to be the main thing that I'm eating to get the protein in, is to use a bone broth. But then if you want to use, and that's going to go back to you with cooking. But if you wanted to use an alternative milk, make sure that you've got the protein in it and no sugar added.
Okay. Yeah, any sort of liquid that you want, as Mary was saying, if you have bone broth and you have a source that you really like, that added protein, that added flavor too, and actually that added body. because because the bones are there. You get all that wobbly, yummy, delicious gelatin that's in there. And so I think mouthfeel is also really nice as well. So if you do have a bone broth that you really like, keep using it. You get more flavor, more nutrition, more protein in your soups. That's a great question. Thank you for that question.
So no to the oat milk, adding oat milk to a soup or soy?
When it comes to, I guess when it comes to flavor, if that's sort of your thing, a lot of people, actually, I met at the farmer's market someone who is allergic to what did I say? Avocado. So she can't have avocado or avocado oil. Imagine living in Southern California and not being able to eat avocado. That's crazy talk. A lot of people don't react very well with soy products as well for whatever reasons. And so I would say, just play with what you want. As far as the added fat and calories that we're referring to, I guess I would piggyback on what Mary Eve said, which is whatever non-dairy source you have or dairy source that you like. You could, if you wanted to use heavy whipping cream in this, you absolutely could instead of the coconut milk. It would be really creamy. It would be creamy, dreamy. You would wake up thinking about that. But again, you don't necessarily need it. If you're non-dairy, you don't have to worry about that, and just use the bone broth for that extra nutrition that Mary Eve was referring to.
And Chef, cream is very, very low lactose. It doesn't have much of the lactose in it. So if you are lactose intolerant, and that may be why you're choosing an alternative milk, you can use cream in things, and it's calories. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Excellent. You guys are giving me a lot of homework to do, which I like. So I can make all these different alternatives and hopefully get back to you.
My brain is like, boo.
No, this is great. And maybe we'll have our little get together for our 4th anniversary, Mary Eve. You just never know how these things work out. So what I did just now is I grated some fresh ginger. Ginger, I know. If I say turmeric, your head's going to explode, but let's start with ginger. So with ginger, and again, there's really lovely health benefits to it. I'm not putting this ginger in and cooking it down. I like the heat. I like the little bit of intensity to balance out all the other flavors that are in here right now. You don't need a lot. I like to add, maybe a tablespoon of freshly grated ginger. The best way to store ginger is just to pop it in the fridge. Do not put it in a plastic bag or a paper bag or any sort of bag. Just go ahead and open your fridge and throw it in there, okay? When you're shopping for ginger, you don't want any dark spots, any wrinkly portions. If you can find ginger that's in these big hands, like the size of my thumb, each of these can be really big. It's going to make your life a lot easier instead of finding these little tiny ones that you have to either peel with the back of a spoon or a grate. I like a big chunky piece of ginger, and it lasts a long time if properly stored in the fridge. Okay?
Trisha says squash soup is my favorite. I love this recipe.
Fantastic.
And then, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, this lemon, if you remember, we used the lemon zest for the frittata. I'm not going to throw this out. All the essential oils and the lemon are in the zest. All the oils are on the outside, and that's in this frittata, which is lovely. But now I have this lemon left over, so I'm going to go ahead and balance out any sort of acidity, because we do have fat in the soup. So I'm going to go ahead and use a little bit of this lemon, maybe half of it, and just adjust the seasoning to that. If you're watching your sodium intake, if you realize I didn't put any salt in this soup, but I did put the better than bouillon stock or the broth. There is sodium in that. Any sort of acid that you have that you add to a dish will bring out the natural sodium in foods. So think about this. If you have avocado and you add salt to it, it's like salty avocado. But once you add lime to it, it really makes the acidity and the salt and everything pop. So anytime you want to just hold off on salt to the last second, add a little bit of acid, be it lemon juice or red wine vinegar or any sort of vinegar, and then taste it before you add that last little bit of salt. And there's your little hint right there.
Going back to the cream, from our DDF program manager, Mary Eve, on the topic of cream being lactose free, great that you say that. I can definitely put half and half in my tea, but I cannot put milk in my tea. Now I know I'm not crazy.
This is clearly a safe space. If we can use terms like that, I feel that we know each other. Yeah, share each other's pants, the traveling pants sort of thing.
Well, I called something a head and you called it a butt. So anyways, but the other thing is sometimes with treatment, people have a lot of taste changes, and food is very complex, and something you said I wanted to jump off on a different topic, but if I'm eating something and it's not right, if you add an acid to it, sometimes it'll bring it back. So if I'm eating something, it's like, it's not there. I love it. Add a lemon, add a lime, add some red wine vinegar. That can sometimes bring the taste buds back. So huge if you're having taste changes.
I mean, I really like to keep, really good vinegars on hand, and the lemon, it always seems to right a lot of wrongs. Something you mentioned, Mary Eve, this little gem right here, canned pumpkin. We are past the holidays, but this is one of the things I feel that people always have in their cupboard is a can of pumpkin. Really delicious recipe that Sarah and I put together. This is a wonderful smoothie. And again, it's another way to use a protein powder that you can get a little bit more protein in your diet.
Pumpkin pie protein smoothie.
Pumpkin pie protein smoothie. I mean, I would buy that. I would do a drive-through. I will take 15 pumpkin pie protein smoothies, please. Pull up, that'll be $16.42. So I have a little bit of pumpkin in here. I have milk. Again, if you have any sort of, non-dairy milk that you prefer, you can use that.
Or heavy cream.
Or wow. Or heavy cream. You would have a whipped pumpkin pie spice. It would be amazing.
Delish.
Whole fat yogurt. I'm not big into non-fat anything, to be honest with you. I from a health perspective, you need fat for any of those fat-soluble vitamins. If you don't have fat, you just don't get those vitamins. I just think it's really important to just do what nature put in front of you. Ooh, I've got some simmering going on. Sarah pointed out, so I'm going to turn this down to low, let that cook out. The sugar, I like to add maple syrup just because pumpkin and maple syrup seem to be besties. They have the little pinky finger twist for best friends forever. Add as much or as little as you wish. Vanilla extract, pure vanilla extract, just a splash of that. Because vanilla and cinnamon, we talked about this before in past cooking events. Vanilla and cinnamon are those two things that if you smell it, you will think sweet. Nothing has touched your palate. And yet you're like, that is just so sweet. I can taste it. I start to salivate. And this is pumpkin pie spice. We all have it. If yours is over 3 years old, get new pumpkin pie spice. In fact, any spice that's over 2 years old, go ahead and treat yourself well. Get some new spices, okay?
So is that up for your ingredients? You good?
That's it. That's
Okay,
all the ingredients I got. And if you want it iced, put some ice in there. We're going to blend this together. We're going to have a lovely smoothie.
So
okay?
before you blend that, let me ask this question for Mary Eve from
Okay.
a patient. I really want to make smoothies for my partner while they undergo chemotherapy and immunotherapy. I was told that I cannot give them raw fruits or vegetables. Any ideas for safe smoothies?
Yeah, so our immune system can be compromised with a lot of the treatments. The chef did something right there, canned pumpkin, right? So that could be a possibility. Adding a pasteurized juice. So it could be a green juice, it could be carrot juice, but you want to make sure that it's pasteurized. That's the huge part of the whole thing. So pasteurization is it's brought up to a temperature that kills all the pathogens. So it could be any kind of juice that's pasteurized in it. I like the canned thing. The other would be is using the freezer. So if I buy frozen fruits and vegetables, they are processed and they're frozen, so all pathogens are removed. So I really like adding chopped frozen kale and spinach to smoothies. You don't even know what's in there. But it's safe. The same thing, it can be frozen carrots. It can be, frozen berries. So pasteurization of juices using freezer things. And then I also like the canned pumpkin. I don't use other canned kind of things, but they're cooked. So I can get my fruit and veg in my smoothie in a safe way for the immune system.
Good message. What about frozen? Is there any sort of benefit to frozen, Mary Eve, or any sort of nutrient decline that happens with frozen things?
That is an awesome question. So actually, sometimes you should. I have that terrible voice. In high school, I was told not to sing, just lip. Anyway, so when something is frozen, it's harvested and frozen in a very short period of time at peak.
Sure.
So sometimes the vegetables that are in my produce section have been sitting there, harvested for a long period of time, not much nutritional value if I'm buying out of season. As I go to the freezer section, it's going to have probably more nutrition in it because it was harvested at peak of season and frozen in a very short period of time. The other thing I love about the freezer section is I can take out a portion, throw the bag back in the freezer, so I'm not having any waste. Also, it's already cut up and cleaned. So if I don't have much energy and I don't feel like really cooking a whole bunch, I don't want to stand at the counter and chop, 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 chop. I'm using the freezer section. And the other thing is, I had a patient the other day. She has terrible neuropathy, which is nerve damage from her treatment. And she says, I can't cut up things anymore because I cut myself. And I said, well, you know what? Everything is chopped up in the freezer section. And she goes, what? I said, there's chopped onions in the freezer section. There's chopped garlic in the freezer section. And her eyes got like huge. She's like, I never even thought to do that. So if you have dexterity problems or you have weakness or neuropathy, using the freezer section can get more vegetables in you because it's already done for you. Easy peasy, done.
Perfect.
And if for some reason your freezer section doesn't have that, if you have a food processor, you have all those fun attachments for the shredding, the slicing.
Yeah.
You really can automate everything.
For sure. Yeah, the freezer.
If you buy, like, it's, we're coming into spring soon, and berries are everywhere, right? I can go to my farmer's market and get a bunch of berries. They freeze super duper easy. So you could do your own frozen. And what Sarah just said, right? So if I've got a bunch of carrots, I'm going to shred a bunch of carrots. I can have my own frozen carrots that I have. So yeah.
This is from our program manager. Read vanilla extract in smoothies, stomachache. Tread carefully. Maybe a tiny bit should be okay if you have blood sugar issues. My husband put vanilla in a sweet potato puff once, and it put me into a long glucose nap.
You mean vanilla extract? Well, vanilla extract, here's the thing about that. It's actually, there really shouldn't be a lot of sugar in it at all, but there is alcohol. Fair amount. There's the same amount of alcohol as there is in vodka.
Yeah.
In pure vanilla extract. You don't want to guzzle it down like Listerine, but it does have alcohol in it for sure.
Hey, Chef, does like the paste or the bean have the alcohol in it or no?
It's not. I know that there's a really lovely option, as Mary Eve just brought up, that you can get vanilla paste. Unfortunately, I do think that does have sugar in it. So one that doesn't is a fresh vanilla bean. Vanilla bean doesn't. You can go ahead and cut a quarter off and scrape it in there, scrape the seeds in there, and then just put the discarded bean, if you will, in whatever you're cooking, and that will infuse all of the fat, be it the oil or the butter or whatever you're using, with that flavor of vanilla bean. But yeah, that's great. That's, you make up a very good point as far as either sugar or alcohol in your food.
Careful, it's not a vanilla simple syrup.
It is not a vanilla simple. Yeah, make sure it's not a vanilla simple syrup. Yeah, for sure. So, I want to make sure that that we have enough time for our sponsors, and we go ahead and get to our last fourth dish. This is the soup, blended up. I just wanted to save your ears from that. You saw me put the fresh ginger and the lemon juice in there. I went ahead and made this one earlier today, but just to show you, this is what I mean. This is what the potato does as far as texture. Do you see that? It's very silky. You can run your finger through it. It sort of holds that. It's a really lovely texture. So I poured that in. And we already have a little bit of vanilla. I'm sorry, not vanilla, but a little bit of whole yogurt. You can use creme fraiche or anything like that to give yourself a little pop of color. And Mary, you've talked about this all the time, which is there's something about the beauty. You are worth it. Your family's worth it. Your health is worth it. Make it really elegant. There's no reason why you can't put a little drizzle on something or put some lovely cheese on top of something with fresh herbs. Make it to when you look at it, you're like, you know what? I actually do want to eat that. You don't have to make a big helping or a big serving. You can always come back to it. But there's something really lovely about giving yourself a little elegance because, it can be a bit challenging. And when you have something that tastes really lovely, like this smoothie with really good balance, again, you don't have to have it all. You can keep it in the fridge and it's really wonderful. But if you're like me or my brother Eric, he's got maybe 15 sweet teeth out of all of his teeth. I have one sweet tooth, but I still like sweet. A banana cream parfait. Now, this is something that I may have made something similar to this as far as vanilla pudding. Let's crack through these ingredients, shall we? We have cornstarch. This is going to be the natural thickener. That goes in. We do have organic sugar. You can use as much or as little as you wish. and a little touch of kosher salt, not iodized salt, and that balances out some of the flavors. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to whisk this. It's dry. It's just dry ingredients. I'm just whisking it together, just to mix it all together. If it was just cornstarch, it just gets everywhere. It's kind of a pain in the bottom. So now what I want to do is add egg yolks. We're talking about,
The milk,
what was that?
the milk.
No, egg yolks. Talking about some fat. This is not the egg whites. This is just the yolks. The yolks. Maybe I'm saying that wrong. The yolks, the yokel locals. That goes in. And a little bit of milk. Not a lot, just a tiny splash. The reason why you start with a little bit of milk with those egg yolks is because if I add all of this milk to this cornstarch mixture, it's almost like when you add cinnamon to something or some sort of powdered spice to a soup and it just stays floating on the top, mocking you, just laughing, and it'll never be incorporated. But if you add just a little bit of milk, it all gets incorporated, okay? So now there's no more cornstarch left. It's not going to float to the top. The rest of this milk is really easily added to this. What I'm going to do is add this, put it over top of medium heat. If you're really brave, you can do medium high, whisking constantly. When it comes to a simmer, you'll let it simmer for 1 minute. That denatures the enzymes in the egg yolk, so it stays nice and like wobbly, right? If you didn't simmer it for 1 minute, it would thin out, and you don't want that for your pudding. This is the finished product. Really simple. We were talking about elegance. You want elegant. Look at that. Just a beautiful little cup in there. Or, Mary Eve, I think that's your favorite cup, your favorite mug that we have.
Love it.
And this, I mean, that's kind of fun, right?
Right? Put it in a
And
pretty
then-
dish.
And then the rest of it, this will be for Sarah, this is for me. And then we've talked about it maybe 4 or 5 times thus far, which is whipped cream, which I've already whipped for time purposes, and banana. Now, I know that banana is something that patients can have. I know that, say, canned peaches is another thing that patients can have. Is there another type of fruit that would be fine for the patients in recovery, other than banana or canned peaches, that would work with this particular recipe, do you think?
Oh, that's a really good question. So melons, but I don't think melons would go into that. I love the banana idea. Cooked apples? We cook like a
You know, a cooked apple that's cooled with a little bit of cinnamon in it, that would be really
Yeah.
lovely. I
Yep,
think that sounds
that's-
fantastic.
Yep, that would go well.
And again, you know, it doesn't have to take a long time. As long as it takes to bring this liquid to a simmer, that's all it takes. And you can keep it in the fridge. Now, one last thing is if you're the type of person that likes, what is that called? At the top of when you have pudding skin. Sarah loves pudding skin. It gets like really sort of like thick. I'm not a pudding skin person. Sarah and I, we almost broke up because of pudding skin. She got up and she threw her glass of wine in my face. We were at a restaurant. I think it was a Michelin star restaurant. It totally wasn't. But if you don't want the pudding skin, just take plastic film when it's still warm, push it to the surface, and you're good to go. Okay?
Is mango good for a pudding?
Ooh, mango. Mango.
Oh,
Can they have mango? What about a mango puree? That'd be great.
I mean, it depends on where you are. I mean, really, if you're in treatment and you've got a lot of GI stuff going on, or you're soon after surgery and got a bunch of GI stuff going on, I wouldn't do mango. I would stick with the banana, the canned peaches, the cooked apples. But if you're doing well, mango.
There you go. Perfect. Speaking of doing well, you guys have stayed with us for a full hour through our antics, through our culinary fun festivities. Really great questions. Thank you so much for posting them. Thank you, Sarah, for making this happen. Thanks to Debbie's Dream Foundation for this. Mary Eve, absolutely happy anniversary. Our 3rd year, couldn't do it without you because you are the brains to this whole fun thing. And we definitely could not do that and be here with you a couple times, 4 times a year without the sponsors, all right? So we'll see you all next time. Any more questions you have, Chef Nathan Lyon on all social media. And thank you again for your time. And thank you. And we'll see you next time. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom off stage so we can show the sponsors who made this thing possible. All right. So we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.
Bye.